Hey, Eva, thanks so much for joining me on Zoom.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is excellent for us to be able to share the information about your academic path and your career path with all our current students.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I'll ask you questions. I'm going to start back to high school. So,
Okay.
okay, where did you go to high school? I guess maybe, yeah, where you went to high school, and then why you chose engineering and what made you come to Cabrillo, and then your experience at Cabrillo. Okay.
Absolutely. I'll say it's not the most typical. I grew up in New York, and I was definitely heavily influenced by some television shows in my teenage years, which is why I was looking at California. Um, and I actually started at University of California, Santa Cruz, and I was there for 1 quarter. And then I realized that I was very quickly going to be amassing an amount of debt that I would never be able to pay back. And that's when I discovered Cabrillo, and I was able to take classes without the financial burden and explore my pathway there. And so in high school, I was always I'd say I excelled in math, but I never really explored into physics. I was a typical teenager. I got pretty standard grades. And then when I was at Cabrillo, I was able to just take courses that I was interested in. And I started in Spanish and economics and pottery and art classes. And I found that I just kept enjoying the math classes because of the incredible staff and the my cohort. We I Our social life revolved around solving math problems. And like I say, I'm a nerd, but it was really just a really social, incredible learning environment that led me to working at the MLC and with Mesa, and it really became a community. And so I got to a point where, for my economics degree, my guidance counselor said, "Okay, you don't have to take any more math." But all my friends were continuing math, and I honestly was like, well, but what happens next? I've only done single variable calculus. What, there's so much more to learn. So I just kept doing the math classes, and then all of a sudden got peer pressured into physics. And then my guidance counselor said, well, you should probably look into engineering. You're doing really well in these courses. And so then that's when I started down the civil engineering path and taking more civil engineering focused classes around surveying and geotech engineering. Loved that class. And also continued to take classes that interested me, like perspective drawing for architecture. And I believe there was an architectural science class. So I took that for 3 semesters as well. And that was really the beginning of this career that I have now.
That's cool. And you say it's unique, but most students are like that. It's what's
Yeah,
great about a community college is you just take whatever you want and then you figure out your path. It's so awesome.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's not like I didn't go in saying, yes, I know what I'm going to do
Right.
and then do that exact path. I definitely bounced around a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so then let's say now you're at Cabrillo and you're nearing transfer. So which schools were you thinking about and what did you decide to do in terms of transferring?
I think I've always been a lifestyle focused person. So I choose the lifestyle, and then my schooling and my career path has followed that. So I started rock climbing in Santa Cruz. And when I was looking to transfer, I found Flagstaff, Arizona, and Northern Arizona University, which has an incredible rock climbing scene. And actually, I should back up. The reason I found Flagstaff was because I had started the U.S. Green Building Council Cabrillo chapter when I was at Cabrillo. And we had a large focus on natural building design and alternative building design. And I had learned about a company called the Earthship Biotecture in New Mexico, and had done an internship with them. So I was living in New Mexico, driving back to Santa Cruz, and drove through Flagstaff and just thought, wow, I want to live here. And when I found the university and they had an incredible engineering program, it was just that was the one. That's how I ended up there.
Okay, so then you transferred, and why don't you talk a little bit about Northern Arizona University? What was it like for you? Did you join clubs or how are the people? I was on sabbatical the past 2 fall semesters, and one of my projects was to look at out-of-state universities. And I love Northern Arizona. So I picked that one.
Yeah.
I also picked the two that are in Mexico because New Mexico, because I love New Mexico. So it's interesting. So what was your
Yeah,
experience like at,
definitely the connection there. I would say that Northern Arizona University has a, um, how do I put it? It's That has a very high acceptance rate. I believe 97% of the students who apply to NAU get accepted. And I really love this model because anybody can go, but the classes are really hard. So a lot of people can't stay. So it rather than being exclusive from the beginning, it says, hey, we don't really care what grades you've had. If you can come and you can prove that you want to be here and you do the hard work, you can stay and you can get these degrees. So it's not an easy degree, but it's an easy entry, which I think is similar to Cabrillo and a community college. So maybe you had different life circumstances that led your grades to not be, a 4.0 for some Ivy League, that you can still be accepted to NAU and really be challenged. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends didn't end up finishing the course because it was too much. And as somebody who was working really hard, I was definitely really challenged in those courses, but I feel like it set me up for my work out of college. Um, Really great people, large outdoors community, good clubs to be involved in. Yeah, and the engineering building at NAU is a LEED certified silver building. It's high end. It's a beautiful place. Lots of resources. It's well funded. It was a great experience.
cool. Okay, and then you talked about an internship that you got that led you to New Mexico. When you were
Mm.
at Northern Arizona, did you wind up getting another internship? You were probably there 2 years, or were you there 3 years? How do you remember?
I was there 3 years.
Okay,
I ended up taking about 2 semesters off
okay.
throughout that time because I was working, also to fund my education. And then I took 6 months off to travel before coming back to finish my degree. um, but no, I worked for the city council in the sustainable building department. And so that was a localized certification program that allowed homeowners to show how sustainable their buildings were, and use that as a metric, similar to LEED and something of a larger scale, but more localized. So that led me to understand a lot of the technologies that go into sustainable constructions. And I should say I studied civil engineering, but my passion was always in architecture. And, and I didn't, the structural engineering provided me with the civil engineering provided me with the structural knowledge and the education around engineering, but it wasn't necessarily within this architecture space that I was dedicating my extracurriculars to.
Okay.
But I did find that they overlapped. With civil engineering, it is
Oh
such an
yeah.
umbrella um, engineering, and you can really take it so many different ways.
Yeah. Sounds cool. Okay, so then you had a couple of internships and now you're nearing graduation at NAU. And what did you decide to do?
I got one of the most coveted engineering spots in Flagstaff, Arizona. Um, it sounded sarcastic, but it was. About 40 people applied for this position because it was in Flagstaff. And so I worked for an engineering firm, a civil engineering firm called Woodson Engineering.
Oh,
And they did geologic surveys, they did water path analysis, and they were the city engineer. So we
okay.
did lots to do with road development, uh, parking lot design, things like that. And it was a great experience, but it definitely did solidify that I was not as passionate about civil engineering as I was in
Okay.
the architecture space.
There's a Whitson Engineers in Monterey and Santa Cruz. Is it the same company, you think? It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, she has a cold.
Apologies.
Oh, no
I'm on the
problem.
tail
Thanks
end
so
of the
much for
flu.
meeting with me. Um, so there is a Whitson engineer here. I wonder if they're connected.
This is a small firm ran by
Okay.
Mark Woodson, so I
Okay.
wouldn't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it was a wonderful experience. I was with them for about a year and a half, and learned lots. It really improved my CAD proficiencies, reading construction documents, and just working in the professional field. Um, but I did, after a year and a half, decide that I wanted to pursue more in the architecture and sustainability space.
Good. Okay. So then what did you do?
I took a sabbatical.
Good. Okay. And you traveled.
I traveled. So, I'd been in college. It was about 7 years it took me to get my undergrad and went directly into working. And I needed to reset. And a friend of mine was getting married in Australia, and I'd always wanted to travel to New Zealand. So I was like, well, if I'm going to the wedding in Australia, I might as well tag on 3 weeks in New Zealand. And so I did that and came to New Zealand, where I am at the moment, and just absolutely fell in love with it. There was the people are just incredible. And I found that there's a lack of skilled talent. It's a small country. They're constantly trying to attract international talent because it's growing quickly and they demand just the supply doesn't meet demand. And so while I was here, I definitely just traveled a while. I rock climbed, I took random jobs. And then I found myself working on a straw bale passive house
Mm,
home, which was the culmination of all of my extracurricular studies. And it was just a fabulous project to be a part of. It was actually the first straw bale passive house to be built outside of Europe.
wow.
Um, so it was a landmark project to be working on. We were able to install lots of sensors and use it as a case study for the future of this type of construction. And since that one's been built, there have been 3 more built.
Wow.
And that company has actually started a prefab system using straw bale prefab. So there's just
Wow.
lots of really cool things going on. And so that was my first job here.
Wait, so how did you find it?
That
Friend of a
job?
friend or a friend, or saw it in the paper, or
How did I find
how
that
did you come
job?
upon it?
I
Come upon it.
So I live in Wanaka, New Zealand,
Okay.
which is in the South Island, and I wanted to live here. Like I said, lifestyle led
Right.
first. And so I was looking at companies that were doing passive house
Mm,
in the
okay.
area, and I cold called.
Okay. Great.
I hit them up and I introduced myself. I said, "Hey, I don't have lots of experience, but I'm really interested. I'm really keen. Um, and I'm here. So
Yeah.
let me know if you want me." And
Okay.
and it worked
Great.
out. And
Excellent.
I guess I should say, because this is going to prospective students, I cold called probably 30 companies
Mm,
um, around this area, and I heard back from some. Some were interested in meeting, some were just not hiring at the moment. But I think when you just show up enthusiastically, a lot can come your way. Enthusiastically and educated, just
mm,
show who you are. And people want people to work. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Okay. So then you were there, do working on that project, and what
I
was
guess I
next?
actually should say then. So I was with them for about a year.
Okay.
Um, but I was ready to take my career to the next level. So that was more of a hands-on job. And I wanted more of a design, a more engineering aspected job. And it was around that time I was volunteering at a sustainability festival. And I got put on a mailing list somehow and got invited to a uh, building science fair,
Wow.
um, which was a launch party for a company. And they promised that they would be blowing things up and setting things on fire. And I was like, I don't know anybody there, but I am going to that party. So I showed up at that party and introduced myself to the CEO. And he said, "Do you want a job?" Off the bat. Um, at that time, I had already decided I was going to go back to school to get my master's degree. And so I said, "Not yet, but let's exchange information and I'll hit you up when I'm ready." And about halfway into my master's degree, I said, "I'd like to start. I'd like to be an intern. I think it will coincide with my studies well." And so that's how I started with the company I'm currently with. And that was back
Wow.
in 21.
Wow. Okay.
And so
And you
that was just from showing up at a random party that ended up in
and
my
I know it's
inbox.
so awesome. And what's your master's in and which university is it?
So I got my master's in architectural engineering from the
Okay.
University of Canterbury
Okay. And that's the one that James Farber is at now.
in Christchurch. Yes, I
Wow.
believe so.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I definitely have to connect you.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Okay. And he's a rock climber too. I ran into him at Pacific Edge so many times.
Oh, love Pacific Edge. The
Yeah.
beginning of my whole story.
Yeah. And yeah, he's very outdoorsy and you'll love him.
Yeah. And so
Okay.
that's yeah, it was just it, it's sort of a back and forth, but I think the main theme was just following my lifestyle and then um showing up,
Showing up and putting yourself out there,
putting myself out there.
right?
Yeah.
Meeting people and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've been there. Okay. So tell me the types of projects you've been working on.
Oh, we do lots of different projects. I
Okay.
honestly, I the whole scale. So at the moment, I'm working on some really high-end single family homes. We're talking 60, 80 mil for a home. And then we're do some social housing, multi-unit residential, apartment blocks at the same price point. Um, yeah, we work all over the board. We've also done archive centers. We've worked on museums. We've worked with universities. We just completed a project that's a living building challenge
Oh, okay.
certified project, if you've heard of that one.
Yeah.
And that's in Wellington. So that was a
Describe,
CLT
describe,
structure.
describe what it is though.
It's a certification process that surrounds not just the performance of the building, but the materials that go into it, cultural significance, design aspects. So I believe it's considered one of the most rigorous design certification um, companies that's available. In order to get a living building challenge certification is one of the most difficult to obtain. Um, and so they have a list of all of these, it's called the red list, all these materials that can't be used. And they're very typical building materials due to their toxicity. So every single material that goes into the building has to be red list free.
Okay.
It has to incorporate cultural significance with the area in which it's being built. Water needs to be reused. It's fully net zero energy. So all energy is generated on site. So there's lots of components that go into it, but it's with all the different certification companies that are coming up. There's a lot of greenwashing going around, and I believe that the Living Building Challenge is still true to its intention.
What do you mean greenwashing? You mean like
Are you
faking it?
familiar with the term greenwashing?
No.
Greenwashing would be a term used to describe the sustainability of something um, in a way that confuses the consumer.
Okay.
Like what's a good example is when Coca-Cola said that their bottles were made out of 100% ocean-bound plastic, and all that meant was it's plastic
Right, right.
that
Okay.
could end up in the ocean.
Okay.
So something like that. And then I
Okay.
think that, I can go on a tangent around it, but around lead certification, a lot of it is box ticking, and it's not necessarily considering the actual sustainability
Got
of
it.
the,
It makes sense now, like whitewashing or whatever, where it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like make them believe you're um you're checking off the boxes, but they're not really, it's not wholeheartedly sustainable.
right.
Okay.
Like for a single family home, well, actually, I don't know in square feet, but say you're making a sustainable home, but the home is a gargantuan mansion. You're like, okay, well, you don't actually need that much, right?
Right.
Like if we're talking actual sustainability, it could be half that size.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, it sounds really exciting and it sounds like you're really happy working for this company and
I am. Yeah, they offer a lot of flexibility as well. It's online. I can travel. Um,
oh wow.
I
That's
work from
great.
the States sometimes. I can work from different parts of the country. Um, and yeah, and they value me and our team. We've got a really good team. About half the team are female engineers. So love to see
Nice.
that.
Yes. Are you convincing any of your family to move to New Zealand?
Oh, we're close. I got my brother stuck here during COVID. That was wonderful.
Great.
So yeah, I moved here in 2018. So it's been a few years now, and they've come to
Okay. Okay,
visit
cool.
lots.
Wow.
And
Okay. And
I'll say as well. Oh, go ahead.
no, 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 go.
I was just remembering one of your questions was around like the opportunities that engineering has
Yes, yeah.
provided.
So, yeah, talk about the opportunity. Yeah, let's do that. The opportunities that an engineering degree has afforded you.
And I'll say I feel like I've spoken on a lot of it, but certainly my residency here in New Zealand, I'm a permanent resident. I can come and go for the rest of my life. I can work here for the rest of my life, and that's tied to my skilled migrant visa, which is a visa that's given to people with qualifications on a skill shortage list. So they needed more engineers. I'm an engineer. They're letting me live here for the rest of my life if I want to. So that's a huge bonus. Um, I recently had a knee injury, unfortunately. And had I been working the physical jobs that I had been working in the past, I would have to do a full career shift. And it's while I can, sometimes I wish that this job wasn't as computer based. It allows me a lot of flexibility in the rest of my life and the other active pursuits that I have.
Mm, cool.
So, yeah.
Okay, and then what are some tidbits or things that you think would be important for students to know now that maybe you didn't know back then and you wish you did, or some things you took advantage of that you want to encourage other people to take advantage of?
Oh, there's
So
so
basically,
much.
I know, I know.
I'll say what made my time at Cabrillo was my involvement in the MLC, Mesa, and the clubs that I was a part of.
Okay.
The community, when your friends are engaged in the community and you're all learning things together, it makes it so much more fun. So definitely just get involved. You never know, who you're going to meet. Some of these people are my best friends still. Um, and then, yeah, just put yourself out there. Um, Never know what's going to come your way. If you're specifically interested in coming to New Zealand, there's a visa called a working holiday visa, and that is open to Americans up until age 26, and you can come and work for a year with no, you don't have to be tied to a job. You can just come for a year and work whatever jobs you want, and that can allow you to get a job, which they can sponsor you, etc. So if you're
Okay.
interested in coming even for a year, look into the working holiday visa. That's great
Okay.
for the youth. I no longer qualify, but um, and I have always led a lifestyle forward life. I think that your job is incredibly important because it's what you're doing every day, but so is your lifestyle and where you live because that's your life. So, choosing where you want to be, let your passions lead you, and then yeah, show up wholeheartedly in your work and something will come your way, hopefully.
Mm,
But yeah, I think, the more you upskill and train, the more desirable you are.
mm. Sounds great. You definitely seem like you took advantage of everything and you really did think of who am I and what is going to work for me. And then all these opportunities came up and you're living a great life, it sounds like.
Yeah. One more thing
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah,
there's no
please.
timeline. There's no
Right.
timeline for it, right? I took 7 years to do my undergrad, worked for a year, took a few years off. I'm now in my 30s and I'm only a few years into my career. Some would say it's late, but some people do full career changes in their 40s or 50s. So there's no timeline. If you're interested in it and you want to be doing it, it's your life every day. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd say that's a huge one.
that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna stop the recording, okay?
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you so much.